actor Alec Baldwin has just given his first interview, I think, since that horrific tragedy occurred on set with the accidental shooting of a popular cinematographer. He says something pretty interesting about how this ultimately went down, at least according to him. Let's take a listen.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired. I mean, even now, I find it hard to believe that. It just doesn't seem real to me.
You haven't said much in public since that tragic accident. Why speak out now? I think the big question, and the one you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, how could this have happened? You've described it as a 1 in a trillion shot, and the gun was in your hand. How do you come to terms with that? It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
What did you think happened? How did a real bullet get on that set?
I have no idea. Someone put a live bullet in a gun, a bullet that wasn't even supposed to be on the property.
How do you respond to actors like George Clooney who say that every time they were handed a gun, they checked it themselves? Your emotions are so clearly so right there on the surface. You felt shock, you felt anger, you felt sadness. Do you feel guilt? You said you're not a victim, but is this the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
Yes. Yeah. Because I think back, and I think of what could I have done.
Alec Baldwin, Unscripted, the newsmaking special event, tomorrow night at 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
So that's their promo for it. So the interesting thing there, obviously, is he says he did not pull the trigger. Very emphatically, right? Which, I grew up with firearms around and learned to shoot when I was young and all that stuff, but I am by no means a weapons expert. So when I initially heard that, I thought there's no way,
Yeah, I mean, I personally thought he was lying.
You have to pull the trigger, right? That's how that works. But I will say that I asked my dad, who is very into guns. This is his hobby and his passion for many years. He also is very interested in the engineering and the mechanics of it, et cetera. And so I said, what people think the gun that was used here was a Colt single action. And I said, is this possible at all? Let me read you his text. He says, a single action means it has to be cocked manually by pulling the hammer back. If that has been done, then normally a light pull on the trigger could set it off, whether by a trigger finger or something else catching the trigger. However, for some older type revolvers, it is considered dangerous to have a cartridge in the cylinder where the hammer rests because it is possible for a bump against something to cause the gun to fire. I hadn't thought of this before, but under this condition, it is possible that the gun went off without the trigger being pulled. Most modern revolvers are designed so that can't happen, but there are still many revolvers around where it could, so it is possible Baldwin may be telling the truth. So that's per my dad.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because what George Clooney brought up, what George Stephanopoulos brought up there about George Clooney is arguably more important to me than all of the semantics. What Clooney, I actually hadn't read this interview, so what he points to is that he was like, all of this stuff they're saying is completely crazy. So he was like, I've never heard the term cold gun. He goes, I've never heard of a lot of these so-called safety practices that they're doing there. He said that it's very clear that a lot of the stuff that they were doing on the set was made up and was terrible in terms of standard safety procedure. Wow. Even more further, he says, quote, every single time I'm handed a gun on set, every time they hand me a gun, I look at it, I open it, I show it to the person I'm pointing it to, we show it to the crew. Quote, everyone does it and everybody knows. Maybe Alec did that, hopefully he did, although initial police reports suggest that he relied on the cold gun call from his crew. So what we're pointing to there is that Clooney and many other high-level actors had said in the past that they have much more stringent safety procedures on their end and also in terms of how they interact with. The other thing is, Alec Baldwin says, I did not pull the trigger. But look, once again, I did not grow up around guns. I've spent a very extremely I've been to a range like 4 times. Even I know you don't put the finger on the trigger unless you're intent on pulling it. And you're pointing it at somebody that it's, in a very, very dire situation. And otherwise, you should have your finger off the trigger in order to avoid even that slight bump that your dad talked about it. So maybe Alec Baldwin, who I assume does not even know that much about guns, maybe he put his finger on the trigger but did not pull the trigger, but even that slight amount of pressure in an older type of gun could have led to the, I don't think they use the term negligent discharge or whatever. Look, all of it is speculation. It's pretty interesting that he's saying that he didn't pull it, but like I said, it seems to be an amalgamation of like terrible safety practice in the first place, live gun or live bullet, now live ammo never should have been on the set, period, inexperienced safety procedure, other people in Hollywood calling him out hardcore, being like, sorry man, like you did not follow the stuff that we've all been doing for years.
We also know that a lot of members of the crew were very unhappy.
Yeah, unhappy with the safety conditions.
Safety conditions and the work conditions, and several had just resigned in protest over some of the work conditions, and the armor who was supposed to be overseeing the safety protocols was very new. This was only her, I think, 2nd movie that she had served in that capacity. And some of the things that they had said too, like it never should have even been that producer who was handing a gun off. It should have been the armor. So even some things that have come out have been real red flags to people. Obviously, there were a million mistakes that were made along the way here to get to the point where it's even relevant whether or not Alec Baldwin ultimately pulled the trigger or bumped the trigger or something happened, because all along the way, there's never should have even been live ammo on that set at all. How does that even happen is still a question that no one knows the answer to, at least not publicly.
Still waiting to hear on that one.
All right, so we'll watch that interview, see if there are any other nuggets for you. In the meantime, guys, enjoy your day. We'll have more content for you later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.